Russia tests new nuclear-capable missile. South Korean multinational company to expand operations in Sarawak. And mandatory quarantine for COVID-19 close contact dropped. Those are the headlines for tonight. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Muhammad Yusuf, and you're now watching TVS Nightline. We begin with this top story. The escalating tension in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Russia on Thursday conducted its second test launch of its new nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that it had successfully launched the Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile, which would serve as warnings to its enemies.
The missile had been launched from plastics in Russia's northwest and hit targets in the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Far East.
Новый комплекс обладает высочайшими тактико-техническими характеристиками и способен преодолевать все современные средства противоракетной обороны. Аналогов ему в мире нет и еще долго не будет.
The Sarmat is a new heavy intercontinental ballistic missile, which Russia is expected to deploy with 10 or more warheads on each missile. It has been under development for years, and its test launch did not come as a surprise for the West, but it comes at a time of extreme tension in the region.
Now, 2022's global inflation has affected many developed countries such as the USA, Japan and the United Kingdom due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict and various COVID-19 curbs being implemented globally. But does this necessarily reflect on Malaysia's economy? And if it does, how bad will the country's economy be affected? Joining us again tonight, Mr. Shan Said, the Chief Economist from Juwai IQI Global Malaysia APAC region. Now, Mr. Shan, will Malaysia be facing similar inflationary pressure?
Inflation will remain higher. If you see, central banks have increased their balance sheet to $30 trillion. Global debt has touched $300 trillion, which is 3 times the global GDP, which stands at $100 trillion. We continue to see the dragflation, not stagflation now, will create havoc for global economy. Inflation is here to stay for the next 2 years. And global economy will have some serious challenges for the next 2 to 3 years. As far as Malaysia is concerned, Bank Negara has played its card very intelligently. January 2020, Bank Negara did preemptive strategy and lower discount rate. In 2021, they maintained status quo at 175. So Bank Negara has got monetary tools to curb inflation. At Juwai IQI, we have already shared with our sophisticated and smart investors that inflation in Malaysia for 2022 will stand between 2.2 and 2.75. The reason is the premise is based on that US dollar will take a beating after H1 and US dollar will take a serious depreciation in the currency market. That's going to boost the outlook for basket of currencies and for emerging market currencies. And we have already shared that ringgit for this year will be between 3.75 and 4.15. Right now, ringgit is trading at 4.27. It's part of the tactical maneuvering of the central bank to give boost to the business, to give boost to the exporters. So I think many economies are competing based on currency outlook in ASEAN region. And from 18th March onwards, Malaysia has joined RCEP, which is perhaps one of the biggest trading bloc in the global economy. So overall, Bank Negara has got 2 monetary tools. One is increasing discount rate, that is the OPR rate to curb inflation. And the second is through appreciating ringgit. These are the 2 variables, monetary tools, policy levers, as we call it, Bank Negara has got. So overall, the inflation outlook remains under control since Bank Negara has got a lot of room to maneuver with its monetary policy outlook. So overall, we believe at IQI that inflation should not be a concern. People should be more worried about global economic fragility, especially in US, Japan, Europe, and US.
Thank you, Mr. Shan. Now, moving on. A South Korean multinational company named OCI Corporation today expressed its interest in expanding its operation in Sarawak. A major polysilicon producer, the company also intends to set up a state-of-the-line research and development center. The expansion is set to open up employment opportunities in the state as the company plans to hire locals. Earlier today, OCI Corp paid a courtesy visit to Deputy Premier of Sarawak and Minister for International Trade, Industry and Investment, Dato' Amar Awang Tengah Ali Hassan, at his office, in which he thanked the South Korean company for having confidence and trust to invest in the state. Now, mandatory quarantine requirements for close contact with COVID-19 cases will no longer be necessary starting tomorrow, April 22nd. The move comes as the ministry announces new procedures that no longer distinguish between vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals.
The Ministry of Health in its Twitter post on Thursday said close contacts exhibiting symptoms are only encouraged to quarantine and perform a rapid self-test on the day, followed by another test on the third day. For individuals who are asymptomatic, quarantine and COVID-19 rapid self-tests are not required, but they are to practice preventive measures for at least 5 days after exposure. The preventive measures include wearing a face mask when going out of the house, avoiding crowded places, ensuring good ventilation, avoiding visiting high-risk groups, and traveling for essential needs only. Previously, only close contacts who had received the booster doses and were asymptomatic were allowed to skip the mandated quarantine.
With high COVID-19 vaccination rates and the number of cases and rate of hospitalizations decreasing nationwide, Sarawak Tourism, Creative Industry and Performing Arts Minister Dato' Abdul Karim Rahman Hamzah said the Health Ministry, MOH, and the Sarawak Disaster Management Committee, SDMC, should study the approach of other countries in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. This is yet another sign that we are moving one step closer to living with COVID-19. However, public health physician Dr. Helmi Hazmi opined that relaxing face mask rules could have its implications.
Dr. Helmi said mask wearing remains an extremely effective and low-cost measure that has a significant impact on the risk of passing on infection and being infected.
There are more pros to maintain the mask. We must remember that there are other viruses and bacteria that we can prevent by using the mask as well.
Meanwhile, other countries are still continuing to mandate the wearing of masks in high-risk environments such as public transport, hospitals and aged care centres. Dr. Helmi said this is entirely appropriate, backed by scientific evidence and proportionate to the risk of transmission in these settings. Furthermore, Dr. Helmi said before relaxing face mask mandates, it is important to observe the healthcare system's capacity to absorb and accommodate the varying healthcare demands.
For example, our capability of our healthcare system to accept cases, to treat cases and even treat the bad cases, among others. We do not want to have a flip-flop decision on the matter which may confuse many people. Just to cite a recent example, in India, they have just removed the mask mandate only to reinstate it again as cases begin to surge.
He further stressed some immunocompromised people cannot get the vaccine due to their underlying conditions. Precautions such as face masks and social distancing are still important methods to contain the spread of the disease.
For vulnerable group of people, especially those above 60 and those who are above 12 who are immunocompromised, who have the difficulty to maintain a high immunity level against the viruses, as compared to the healthy people. The mask probably is just a minor trouble, but on the bright side, we can still move about, mobilize, and this is good for our business. And economy is just as important.
Dr. Helmi advises the public to remain vigilant and face masks must continue to be worn, especially in enclosed areas.
Now, a new partnership between Reach 10 Communication and Malaysia East Asia Satellite Miasat will contribute towards Sarawak's aspiration of achieving equitable broadband access for all Sarawakian. The collaboration will set to enhance connectivity for over 3,000 rural areas in Sarawak and improved high-speed broadband with speeds of up to 100 megabits per second.
A groundbreaking ceremony was held on Thursday at Samajaya Free Industrial Zone and witnessed by Minister of Utility and Telecommunication, Dato' Julahi Norawi.
Capacity from the new satellite and the East Malaysia Gateway will improve the Sarawak government's ability to achieve equitable broadband access for the people in line with our target to ensure that 93.6% of the state's populated areas will have telecommunication and internet coverage for the year 2025, with 99.9% of households across urban and rural areas having internet connectivity, while internet speeds are increased from 1 to 10 Mbps to 20 to 100 Mbps.
Utilizing the new Miasat 3D high-throughput satellite HTS East Malaysia Gateway and supported by the new Miasat 3D satellite, it has a capacity of 13 GB, which will serve network connectivity to over 3,000 remote areas from a single satellite. The new Miasat 3D satellite, which will be launched in June 2022, will enable cost-effective high-speed broadband in areas without any terrestrial network nationwide, as it can be deployed quickly without the need of additional infrastructure.
Coming up right after the break, Bintulu woman falls prey to human trafficking. Police identified the mastermind behind Sungai Bakap Depot breakout, and TikTok banned in Afghanistan for misleading youth. All these and more right here on TVS Nightline. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, a woman from Bintulu dubbed into believing that she was offered a high-paying job in Kuala Lumpur ended up falling victim to a human trafficking syndicate. Fortunately, Bintulu Member of Parliament, Datuk Seri Tiong King Sing, intervened in time to prevent any untoward tragedy.
Tiong said that the woman originally took the job with the hope of improving her family's financial situation. However, it was later discovered that she was actually arranged to work with a criminal group in Thailand. As she was boarding the flight, she realized that it was heading to Cambodia instead, where she stayed for several months and learned that the group has actually planned to send her back to Thailand using smuggling trails, where later she would be trafficked into Myanmar. According to Tiong in a social media post, he wrote that she managed to escape Thailand and looked for help. Meanwhile, her family reached out to Tiong directly, where he immediately flew to Thailand the next day. With the help of Tiong and other cooperations, she arrived in Kuala Lumpur safely on Wednesday, April 20th. In the same post, he also warned the public to apply for jobs through proper channels and to do a background check of the company, as not everyone may be as fortunate to escape.
Now, police have identified the main culprit suspected of inciting the riot that triggered the breakout involving hundreds of Rohingyas at the Sungai Bakap Immigration Depot yesterday. Kedah Criminal Investigation Department Chief Dato' G. Suresh Kumar said the man in his 30s is a detainee at the camp that police believe was the mastermind who incited the detainees to riot.
According to him, the wanted man remains at large and search efforts are ongoing. Suresh said as of last night, some 200 of the Rohingya detainees have been questioned. Over 20 personnel from the Immigration Department and the People's Volunteer Corps, who are on duty during the breakout, were called in today to record their statements as well. Meanwhile, Bandar Baharu District Police Chief Muhammad Akmal Hizam Abdul Cooper has given his assurance that the district and its surroundings were safe despite many detainees still being on the loose. He said 14 police teams with a strength of 350 personnel, including the General Operations Force, have been mobilized to track down the fugitives. Akmal also advised residents not to act on their own if they happen to come across the escapees and instead immediately contact the nearest police station. In the 4:30 a.m. incident on Wednesday, 528 Rohingya detainees escaped from the depot following a riot.
The Borneo Jazz Festival returns this year to entertain jazz music enthusiasts from all over the country. After 2 years of absence due to the pandemic, the festival is expected to further boost the state tourism industry.
Minister of Tourism, Creative Industry and Performing Arts, Datuk Sri Abdul Karim Rahman Hamzah said the government is targeting a total of 3,000 physical attendees during the 3-day festival.
Now the maximum is 1,000 per night. So it's 3 nights, so about 3,000. Yeah, 3,000, and we hope to meet that 3,000 target. For those who are going visual, that we have yet to see, because it will be very difficult for us to estimate. But then last year's visual Borneo Jazz, we managed to gather 240,000.
200,000.
Yeah, more than 200,000 viewers. But at that time it was free. This year they have to pay, so the number will probably be less than that. Much less.
In the meantime, Karim hopes that neighbouring country Brunei Darussalam would consider opening its border when the festival takes place.
And also, since this concert is going to be held in Miri, we do hope that our border with Brunei will be open by then. Because I believe there are lots of jazz lovers on the other side who would long to come over. Yeah.
The Borneo Jazz Festival this year will be held at Coco Cabana in Miri from June 24th to June 26th, with the theme Jazz in the Jungle. The festival will witness performances from more than 60 artists from around the world, including the United States, Hungary, Singapore, and France.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, onto some global update. Popular social media app TikTok will be banned in Afghanistan as part of a drive to block immoral content. Taliban administration spokesperson said on Thursday that the widely used social media application is misleading the younger generation. The decision is the first time the group has banned an app since they came to power last year. The cabinet also decided to block the popular South Korean PUBG game and ban Afghan television channels from airing immoral content. Tennis world number one Novak Djokovic has slammed Wimbledon's decision to ban players from Russia and Belarus from competing on this year's championship. He described the move as crazy and uncalled for, and that sports and politics should be kept separated from one another.
I will always condemn war. I will never support war, being myself a child of war. I know how much emotional trauma it leaves. Us here in Serbia, we all know well what happened in 1999. In the Balkans, we've had many wars in recent history. Ordinary people always suffer most. However, I cannot support the decision of Wimbledon. I think it is crazy. Players, tennis players, athletes, they have nothing to do with it. So when politics interferes with sport, it doesn't turn out well.
In 1999, Djokovic, who was 11 years old, had to endure the attacks on the Serbian capital, which marked the beginning of what would be a 78-day campaign by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization NATO to bring an end to crimes committed by the country's then president, Slobodan Milosevic, against Albanians in the province of Kosovo.
Queen Elizabeth II celebrated her 96th birthday on Thursday, although her birthday is officially marked in June. Born on April 21, 1926, Queen Elizabeth took the crown at the tender age of 27 on June 2, 1953.
Queen Elizabeth surpassed her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria as Britain's longest reigning monarch in September 2015 by surpassing the 63 years, 7 months, 2 days, 16 hours and 23 minutes that her great-great-grandmother spent on the throne. During her reign, the Queen has broken new ground for the British monarchy during many of her overseas visits. In 1975, she was the first British monarch to visit Japan, and in 1986, she met Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping and became the first British monarch to walk on the Great Wall of China when she visited the country. The 96-year-old monarch is seen as a dignified figure, much loved by royalists and respected even by Republicans. Philip, the Queen's husband of 73 years who had been at her side throughout her record-breaking 69-year reign, died at Windsor Castle on April 9, 2021, aged 99. The Queen has cut back on engagements and her health has been in focus since she spent a night in hospital last October for an unspecified ailment and was then instructed by her medical team to rest. In February, she caught COVID-19 and suffered mild cold-like symptoms and has since cancelled some in-person engagements.
Wrapping up the Nightline, a jersey shirt worn by football legend Diego Maradona in the 1986 World Cup will be put up for auction in England next month. Dubbed the Hand of God, it has already received a bid of £4 million or 22.4 million ringgit in an online auction.
England midfielder Steve Hodge got Maradona's jersey after the game and recently announced he was putting it up for auction after 19 years on display at England's National Football Museum. However, the sale was complicated by claims from Maradona's family that the wrong shirt is going up for auction. Nonetheless, London's Sotheby's head of streetwear and modern collectibles said the authenticity of the shirt has been verified using photo matching.
Undertook a process called photo matching, which is when you look at the shirt in really microscopic detail, even examining individual threads and groups of fabric and comparing it against photos of the game to the shirt that we have in our possession. And we were able to find conclusive photo matching through a firm outside of the company that we.
The company also said the shirt had been in the National Football Museum for nearly 2 decades, and there had never been a claim that it was not the one Maradona wore while scoring the goals. Maradona wore a number 10 jersey in the quarterfinal in Mexico, putting Argentina ahead by punching the ball into the net early in the second half, a goal that became known as one of the greatest goals in World Cup history. Since he died in November 2020, Maradona's family has been involved in a series of scandals and court battles related to his legacy.
And that's all the time we have for tonight's TVS Nightline. For more headlines, head to our website at tvstv.my or follow us on our social media. I'm Muhammad Yusuf. Thank you for watching.